Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izzo, and oh, man, do we have another great show for you. I am telling you what, we do a lot of leadership shows, right? And I am so fortunate that I get our folks who are from the military, formerly with military, retired from the military. You know, we've interviewed General John Gronsky, right? U.S. Army in Iraq. We've interviewed Navy SEALs and Special Operations Forces people from Delta Force and talking about leadership and success and everything. Do you know who I've never interviewed on the show? I've never interviewed a Marine about leadership. Guess what you get today? You get a Marine and leadership. And I am telling you, this book that they have written, and this has been co-authored by three people. First of all, Angie Morgan is with us. All right, she is one of the co-authors, and she's waving at you for those who are alive. But also, it was written by Sean Lynch and Courtney Lynch. Now, understand that Sean and Courtney are not related, except that Sean's brother married Courtney, and well, it gets complicated. But both Courtney and Angie were in the Marines, and Sean was in the Air Force. If you want to know something about leadership from their perspective, and you want to understand something that I'm really, really keen on, and it's the behavior. A lot of times we talk about all the emotional stuff. We talk about how emotions and other types of things get involved. But what about your behavior? What are the things about your behavior that you need to change to be a leader? And then here's the other part of that. Because all of us can be a leader, regardless of where you're at in the organization, right? You can be a spark for leadership. Oh, what, Jay? What do you mean spark? Well, you know, I don't know about you, but the truth of the matter is, when I think of the word spark, I think that that is the beginning of something that's going to turn on fire. And you could be a spark leader. It can be a moment in your time that could be a spark that can lead to leadership. It could be that you decide to take control of who you are and your behavior, and you become disciplined, and you become that spark in your office or in your team or in your business that can transform your business and create a wildfire based on the spark that you can be. That's what Angie and I are going to talk about today. It's pretty cool, right? Have you ever thought about yourself as a spark? You could be. It's about your behavior, and we're going to talk about how you can change it and do that. Before we get to her, though, let's talk about what we do every week, right? I lead you through the 4 areas of your life, right? We're 4-part people. We're physical, mental, emotional, spiritual people. And the truth of the matter is we should be in training every single day in all 4 of those areas. Matter of fact, it was interesting as I was reading this book, you know, they kept talking about rehearsal, that they rehearse and they rehearsed and they rehearse. And I was thinking, you know, what they're talking about is training, that you train so well that when you're under stress, when you're under pressure, when you're under the gun, guess what? You can fall back on your training and you can actually stay calm and survive it, and you can make it happen. That's what they're talking about here. That's one of the behaviors, right? Is that we got to stay in training. We need to do that in 4 areas of your life. So what does that look like physically? Well, so physically, let's take a look at this. How are you doing on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being miserable, 10 being I'm doing unbelievable in my training, of eating right, getting exercise, drinking enough water, and getting enough sleep? Just those 4 things. How would you rank yourself in those 4 areas on a scale of 1 to 10? Right? Now, by the way, if your number is a 3, I don't want you to panic. Okay, this is not about you having a 10. This is about us starting with someplace and getting from a 3 to a 3.5 or a 4. Right? So what does that look like to make a change? Well, it could be you change your eating habits. You know what? You can do that. That can be part of your training every day. You can just change your eating habits. Just be a little bit more disciplined. Right? Put down the sugar. Get rid of the chips. Stop the beverages. Take a walk. Simple things, right? I'm not telling you to go to the gym and work out for 3 hours. Right? So whatever your number is between a scale of 1 to 10, 5 being average, what's your number? Got it? Okay, good. First number. Second number, mental number. My wife says, don't be a mental loafer, meaning don't sit on the couch and just let things come at you. You need to be active in your growth mentally, meaning in your knowledge and your understanding. You know, what are you doing to help yourself grow in your job or in your relationships? What are you learning, right? Here's an idea. Pick up Spark. Available on Amazon. There's an idea. That'll get you off the couch. And if you say to me, well, Jay, I don't really like to read. You know what's really cool? Audible. And by the way, do you know if you go to audibletrial.com, AND, which is for a new direction, you can get your free trial and a free book. Did you know that? You can. And listen to the book. And what I tell my coaching clients all the time is listen to the book, take some notes. What stands out to you? What do you need to improve on? So you don't have to read the book. You can listen to the book, but be an active participant as well. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you say you're doing in your mental training? All right, so you got 2 numbers. Third number is the emotional number, right? A lot has been written about emotions, especially emotional intelligence, emotional quotients, those type of things. And the truth, Daniel Goleman, has written all sorts of things on it. But the truth is that it really comes down to 2 things. How well are you able to control your emotions under stress and pressure, right? Like when somebody cuts you off of traffic or you have to wait in a long line during Christmas. And then 2, how well are you able to tap into and understand the emotions of other people, which requires you to actively listen and participate and understand, which may mean that you need to increase your emotional vocabulary. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you say your training is going in those 2 things? All right, you got 3 numbers. Finally, it's spiritual. You know what? We all run to something when things go bad, don't we? We all believe in something, and we're going to run to something, whatever that is. Things go bad, we will run to that. Whatever that first thing is, that's what you believe in. That's going to try to get you back to center. It could be God. It could be nature. It could be meditation. It could be something bad. It could be you. I have 2 questions for you. How's it working? And what do you need to do to change it? Because the goal of the spiritual thing is to bring you back to a place of center and a place of peace. And that's what we're after, right? So you've got these 4 numbers now, right? And the 4 numbers like the legs of the chair. If the legs of the chair are uneven, right, it's bad posture. And if the legs are too low, right, what happens is we can't eat at the right table. So we want to bring them up together evenly as possible. And speaking of someone who's got her legs of her chair at the right height, and even her name is Angie Morgan. She is a dynamic creative thought leader who's committed to helping others develop their leadership skills so they are more influential, effective, and inspirational in all areas of their life. Angie learned how to lead as an officer in the Marine Corps. Following her time in uniform, Angie pursued a career in sales with both Merck and Pfizer before launching her own consulting firm, Lead Star, and writing her 2 books, Leading from the Front and the New York Times bestseller, Spark. Angie has an MBA from the Ross School of Business. She's an avid athlete who competes in marathons and triathlons and is never one to turn down a push-up competition. I am not going to challenge her today. She's also the mom of 2 great boys and commits a tremendous amount of energy and time to being a super fan at their sporting events. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, and welcome for the first time, and hopefully not the last, Angie Morgan. Welcome, Angie, to A New Direction.
That was such a great introduction. You motivated me. I walked through the numbers. I used the scale. I saw opportunity. And thank you, Jay, for that wonderful big introduction. I loved it.
Good. And if you don't mind, I ask these a lot. If you've done this, I mean, where did you find yourself at in those 4 areas?
Well, I think the physical is something I'm very committed to. Like, I'm really avid athlete. Like, I can really take care of myself, but it's the holidays, so like eating, and it's funny because I pride myself at being in good shape, but what I eat affects how I feel, and how I feel affects my commitment to other things, my emotional space, my spiritual space, everything else. I used to say, win the morning, win the day. But I realized it's like the night before, like you winning the morning and waking up alive, awake, ready. It's what are you doing the night before? And so I'm kind of backing up a little bit and thinking, win the day, win the next day, win that day. It's commitment though. Yeah. And I was working with some clients this past week, and we were going through their strategy, and we got to a place and we put it up on the wall, and they're like, this isn't sexy. This isn't fun. And I'm just like, the real work of leaders, it's not sexy. It's not fun. It's discipline. It really comes down to just being really understanding of what you want and having a very disciplined approach to getting it. And so if discipline isn't fun, it's not flashy, it's not emotional intelligence or all those other things, but it's like, yeah, you got to work your plan.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? Discipline is a word that we don't like to hear very often, but it is a word that is absolutely essential for us to be effective as leaders, but also if we're going to be really truly successful. And I also find it interesting that it's only disciplined until it becomes a habit, right? And then, right, because then it doesn't feel like discipline once you've made that commitment, and then it becomes a habit, does it?
No, you're absolutely right. I've never heard it put that way, but that's spot on and perfect. And then you crave it, right? It's not hard to do. It's easy to do. You miss doing it when you don't do it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I know that for, I've worked out, I have a gym in my garage. And
Awesome.
when the pandemic started, I kept training because it's just a part of my lifestyle. Right. And so I feel guilty and awful when I'm not training. Right. So it's just a habit. It's such an ingrained habit. And I think what people don't understand, because discipline is so important, is it's with anything, whether we're eating, whether we're working out, whether it's spiritual, whether it's reading a book, getting used to reading regularly,
Mhm.
or dealing with your emotions, right? We're going to talk about that,
Oh, yeah.
right? That's a disciplined habit that we can get to over the course of time, and that's going to require us to be intentional and repetition as well.
And having the bandwidth to be able to deal with those chaotic times. If we're stressed out, maxed out, and then get a really unfortunate surprise,
Right.
we're not going to be in the best place to achieve our highest expectations of our own self. And that's been part of the reason why we wrote Spark was to help just that. Like, we all have worked in organizations where we've picked out like go-to people, the people that we say, oh my gosh, she's a superstar. They always get the opportunities.
Right.
And we spent a lot of time just studying, like, what are these people, these go-to people doing differently? And it's not like they were born with this special privilege. They were just demonstrating behaviors that consistently put them in a position of influence, which is why people were selecting them for opportunities and other people were felt missing out. And it's like, you want to crack that code. Like, what are those behaviors? And if you can operationalize them, you can find yourself in a position to get those opportunities that you vie for. If not handed to you by other people, you can figure out how to create those opportunities for yourself.
Yeah, this is what I loved about this book. Spark, by the way, available at Amazon bookstores near you. Apple Bibles. What I loved about this book is because when I was in grad school working my master's and doctorate, I studied under Skinner's last student. Was one of my
Mm.
BF Skinners, and I
Wow.
I know that people do not understand behaviorism, but I want to give you just something here that you and Courtney and Sean do really, really well. Is that it's a focus on behavior. If we change the behavior, right, other things seem to follow in place. And it really does. It kind of goes counterintuitive a little bit to what most people think, that we can kind of we can work on changing our behaviors. And you're talking about 7 distinct behaviors here. And before we get into them, though, I want you to just help everybody out, because the word is spark. I mean, that is the front title of the book, Spark: How to Lead Yourself and Others to Greater Success. Can you help people understand what a spark is? I gave a little bit, but I didn't do a really great job of introducing.
No, it's really, it's like they're the people who just choose to make things happen for themselves. They're not going to wait around for others to solve their problems. They're going to take off, and you said it, ignite. They're going to start a fire. They're going to do something about the situation they find themselves in. I mean, we've been enough in working environments where we pass blame around. Oh, the market. Oh, the pandemic. Oh, this. Oh, that. There's always going to be a reason
Right.
or an excuse for why you're not doing something. But sparks don't care about that. It's like, okay, all these things, yeah, true, I acknowledge them, but I'm really going to own my space. I'm going to move from the passenger seat to the driver's seat and act agency, right? I'm going to just take the wheel here and try to figure it out, because I don't want to do the blame game anymore. Like, I want to own this and find my own path to whatever it is I'm seeking. So that's a spark. And I love you talking about spark too and fire. I love that Bruce Springsteen line, you can't start a fire without a spark.
Right. Right.
Think about yourself. Like, you're not going to make any change until you decide to change. And one of the most powerful things you can do is start by changing your mind about it,
Right.
and then behavior will follow.
Yeah. It's just interesting that I just don't think we look at our behavior enough. I think we can sometimes talk a really good game without changing what we're doing. And that's nothing more than blowing smoke.
Yeah.
You have 7 key elements of leadership here: the behaviors: character, credibility, accountability, vision, service, and confidence. And I want to start in right away, because each chapter is distinctive, and I want to start looking at these behavior patterns. The the first chapter I'm going to kind of go over. It's Your Choice to Be a Leader is the title. And you come up with a Marine Corps principle, which I think is critical to this entire book. Know yourself and seek improvement. It's
Mhm.
that, and I think that particular principle is critical to the rest of this book, because if we don't start there, I don't know that we can get these 7 behaviors.
100%. Like the most important leadership relationship you have is the one with yourself. And we, no matter where we are in life, we can always explore self-awareness, what it is unique about us, what our blind spots are, more information, bring it on in, validate it, test it for yourself. And the more you know about yourself, the more you can manage. Whether it's, I know that when my schedule is really busy, my best intentions for diet or working out just come undone. Or I know that when I'm given these types of assignments, I get a little bit of an anxiety, and here's maybe how I can manage it. And so just paying attention to you and your reactions and being in your space is really important. And this is never ending. And I'm sure, Jay, you can attest too. Like, I'm still learning things about myself. And most importantly, when I think about self-awareness, I also try to discern what is like an authentic Angie
Right.
belief and feeling versus something that somebody told me and I just kind of adopted as truth. And those are two distinctly things. Like, Angie, you're not, and I read about this, you're bad at math. And then discovering later in life, like, it's not that I'm bad at math, I'm slow at math. That's different, right? Like, how many things have we written off in life because somebody told us something, we didn't question it, we went with it, and we boxed ourselves in.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I think this is also in this chapter, though, you bring up the importance. Carol Dweck's research is so critical, I think, to following up in what you're saying, in that we have to have a mindset change, because so often we get in a fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. Let's talk about that in terms of taking that now awareness to the next level.
Wherever you are on your journey, there is something to learn about you. And it's really tuning into your mindset to see if you're even available
Mm.
to learn. And so we talk about Carol Dweck. She did some phenomenal research on mindset
Mhm.
being either growth oriented or fixed mindset. And I think you can tell by the distinct, the names, we don't want to be fixed. And that just means that, I'm done learning. I know me.
Right.
I've been on this earth 45 years or how many years, and I'm a finished product. But the reality is we're never finished products.
Right.
We have so much, we actually underestimate how much growth and development we do have, how much our personal preferences are going to change. And sometimes when we underestimate the change we have, we become, closed for business, really.
Mhm.
My dad wrote about this. He was a high school principal. He was a really important leader to me. He would have teachers who would come to him and say, I've got 20 years of experience in this building. And he'd pause for a second and go, do you really? I think you've got 1 year of experience. You repeated it 20 times. I'm not getting anything new from you. And we work with these people, right? They've been collecting checks and they haven't really grown. We don't want to be
Right.
that person. We want to be relevant. We want to be fresh. We can always learn.
Yeah, you talk about in terms of knowing ourselves and being self-aware. We have to know our strengths and weaknesses. And I guess one of the things that I always struggle with when I coach people, or when I talk to people like you who have written outstanding books like Spark, and you talk about strengths and weaknesses, how much can we actually fix our weaknesses? Or is it a matter of we need to be aware of them and we try to work on them, or do we put them in a different perspective? What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think about some of my weaknesses, and I've got plenty, believe me. We could have a whole episode talking about all the things wrong with my life if we prefer. But
Right.
I always think it's like, how much growth is in these areas? And
Right.
sometimes, you bring people around you who can compensate for those. Like my husband, like he's a really confident decision maker, and he sees things really black and white. And he'll say that's not always a good thing. But
Right.
when I need that, I go to him because that's not how I see. Like I see like, oh, I don't know how to interpret this. I'm letting my emotions rule
Right.
my decision making too much. He's just very logical and fact oriented. And I value that. And so you think about we all could think about our weaknesses, making sure that we have some way to either manage them internally, figure out how much we can really grow with them, or how do we surround ourselves with people who compliment us.
Yeah, and I think sometimes our weaknesses may not be the weaknesses that we think they are, only because I think, like you talked about earlier, it wasn't that you couldn't do math, right? And you thought it was a weakness. It was just that you were slower at math.
Yeah.
So therefore, it's no longer really a true weakness. It's a weakness that it's maybe not up to par on some compared to something else, but it's not like you can't do it. You've actually improved it. It's just it takes you longer.
It was funny too. Like around recently, I've been coaching some clients in Europe whose English is, English is their second language, and they're so self-conscious about their English, especially speaking to somebody who, English is my only language. I'm really sad. I wish I had multiple languages, but don't. I just really speak English and some broken Spanish from a very long time ago. But anyway, my point being is like, I was talking with them and I'm like, not only is your English really good,
Right.
but the way that you say these words is actually really exciting to hear them pronounced that way. It sounds beautiful, actually. And what I offer that up too, because sometimes people can share with you strengths and interesting observations that you may never have known. Like, hey, you may not know this about yourself. And that can be a really wonderful gift or surprise that you can share with people.
That's awesome. Her name is Angie Morgan. The book is entitled Spark, How to Lead Yourself and Others to Greater Success. You're listening to her here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, my two sponsors, right? Epic Physical Therapy is one of them, right? They're my physical therapist. They're professional athletes' physical therapists. They literally come into the Raleigh-Durham Chapel Hill area and they come to Epic Physical Therapy because they literally do not just treat your symptoms or injury. They look at you as an entire functional whole. They create a customized treatment program specifically for you. And you know what? It works. I'm just telling you, it does. When you're ready for your epic relief, your epic recovery, and epic results, start with Epic Physical Therapy. Just go to epicpt.com. That's EPICPT.com. And Linda Craft and Team Realtors, for more than 35 years, they've been helping people all over the world sell homes and buy homes because they've created lasting relationships that have translated into helping people with their homes. Folks, I just got to tell you something. There's a reason why her past clients say that she's a legend of customer service. And that's what her and her team do. So when you're ready to sell your house or ready to buy your next one, start with Linda Craft and Team Realtors. You can learn more by going to lindacraft.com. That's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with Angie Morgan and her book, co-authored with Courtney Lynch and Sean Lynch, entitled Spark. And we're just getting started into this book, but I loved this book. By the way, one of the things I want to let people know about this book is that at the end of every chapter, you have a Spark action that people can take action items to do. And then you have a charge ahead section where people can go to sparkslead.us. By the way, it's sparkslead.us, SPARKSLEAD.us. And you can further develop your self-awareness and mindset as well as you can with these other chapters. And the charge ahead is really great. And I really loved that at the end of the chapter and what you guys what you gals did. And guys, I don't know. What do I call you?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. I'm okay with that.
Okay. So, but what you all did, I am in the South, but I don't like using the 4-letter Y word, which is y'all. But what you did here was really, really great. And sharing your individual stories in the middle was fantastic. So I want to commend you on that. Let's go to chapter 2, your character, the congruence between values and actions. And you start off by saying a leader by definition has followers, but people only follow if they trust you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the behavior. Let's talk about the behavior change we need to make there.
Yeah, I can kind of combine the next two chapters together just as a way for people to visualize character and then thinking about credibility. Because I think that these two things go hand in hand because they contribute to the level of trust and influence you have with other people. So imagine you work with somebody and guess what? You really like that person. They're just so nice and kind and respectful, but they're just kind of, complacent and they don't really work that hard, but you really like them. So high character, low credibility in regard to performance. And then there's somebody else that you work with. You don't like them at all. They're kind of a jerk. They say they're one person, they behave a different way, their character's shady, you suspect they fudge their expense report or engage in just unsavory behavior. You just don't like them. But you know what? You want to be on their team because they just get stuff done. So high credibility, low character. The opportunity for all of us is to be both, right? If you have high character, people can see that you just don't talk about your values, you actually live them. You don't necessarily just say what you're going to do, you actually do it, and you really keep a high standard for other people to follow. It's like the magic. That's a really high trust, credible relationship. And trust is so important because without it, there's no relationship. We might work together, but you're not going to get the best of me.
You talk about, I want to talk about values for a second, because you do make a really big deal in this book about values, because you do say before you lead others, you're going to have to lead yourself. And, we talked about, you got to be aware, but we have to be really clear on our values, don't we? And we have to live them. We can't just write them down on a wall, right? They got to be lived.
I did some research coming into this values section, just to like, why do good people do bad things?
Right.
You can think of prominent politicians, seemingly great people, sports stars, things like that. Like, why do good people do bad things? And oftentimes it's the lack of awareness of your values. And the interesting research is the closer your values are to you, the more likely they're going to serve as self-fulfilling prophecies. So there's some sort of, proximity and manifestation. And yet, it's everything. I mean, it's your character. If you're a shady character, not only do you not trust yourself, but why would anybody trust you?
On page 45, you make an interesting statement about that. You say, acknowledging the disconnect between our actions and values is where true growth takes place.
That's some tough self-confrontation, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't happen on a drive home listening to a song. That is time in reflection and thinking about how are you not showing up in your life. So if you go to the sparkslead.us site, there's a values download that you can see and just kind of go through and assess what are your most important values. And if you look at the top 3, those are the ones that you really need to hold yourself accountable to, and do some self-confrontation. And if you wonder, right, am I living my values? Look at your calendar. See where your time is spent, because that's going to be a really good indicator of whether you are, quote unquote, who you say you are, or if your priorities are really reflected in your daily choices.
You even make a statement in this chapter. You say, when we are most busy, it's when we are most vulnerable to compromising our values.
So not thinking about it, right? We're just so task oriented. We're not strategically thinking of ourselves holistically. Am I showing up the way that I want to? I feel like that's part of what's going on with the pandemic right now. We paused hard, many of us,
Right.
and we reflected and we thought about our lives, and we're like, gosh, I'm not like this family that I have that I'm now seeing every day. We're truly disconnected. That's not who I am as a person. This work that I have, it sucks. This isn't a place where I can grow.
Right.
And so, people are making a lot of really important and profound choices on how they want to live the next stage of their life, which I think is great. It's certainly causing disruption and disappointment, but I think for individuals, they're suddenly realizing that they have more choice than they ever thought possible. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, I do. I think it's a good thing. I think one of the other pieces of what happens when our values get compromised, and you bring this up in the book too, is that, and I think it falls in line with this, is that when we're tired and we're stressed. And I also wonder if, because we've been in this pandemic for a long time.
Oh yeah.
And, we're all under pressure and stress, right? And if, as I talk about in the opening, right? If you're not training, you have nothing to fall back on. And at that point, that's when you can compromise yourself the most, right? And we're seeing it, right? I mean, we do see it in different ways across this country of how people are willing to compromise otherwise good values, right? Because they're stressed, they're tired.
Oh, absolutely. I love that you mentioned the point of like falling something back on, because if you're constantly in training and preparing for something and you do a mistake or you do have a misstep and you want something to fall back on, you're not starting from ground zero. You still have built a solid foundation, because we're human beings. We're irrational. We're sometimes illogical, very emotional. we're never going to be perfect. And so if you deviate from your values, you want it to be a really small imperfection and then a big imperfection. So going back to why did people do bad things? It doesn't start off as doing really, really bad things. It
Right.
starts off as a misstep and another misstep and another misstep. And suddenly you're buried beneath this pattern of behavior that just isn't you.
Yeah, you're in too deep, right? And you've lost who you are
Hmm.
at the same time. In chapter 3, entitled "The Four Keys to Being Credible," you have a quote here. It says, "Many of us plow through our day without thinking about the impact we have on others." And before we get to the four key actions, or understanding and meeting the standards of others, but that quote, "Many of us plow through our day without thinking about the impact we have on others." This wound up being a conversation point at a Christmas lunch yesterday,
No, really.
because I don't know who wrote it, but because I said, you know what, I don't think we realize that every conversation that we have, we have to be more intentional, because we don't understand the full impact that we're having with those conversations. That was what inspired me when I read. That's why I wrote it down.
So funny you say that, because it's funny you were talking about that yesterday, because I was having the same conversation with my 11-year-old son. He was just he came home from school yesterday. He was just in a really bad mood. I asked him to do something. He kind of growled and he did it, but he kind of half-assed it. He didn't really do it. And then we get in the car and I asked him something and he kind of snarked at me. And finally I said, I don't know what is going on, but this is not acceptable. You have to know that your attitude impacts other people. This isn't just you. This is me, and I don't deserve this. And so then he's like, I'm just really tired. I said, great, me too. I'm exhausted. What time did you get up this morning? I got up earlier. And it's like, I don't want to have a competition about who's more tired. The point is that we all are carrying something. And what
Right.
if we all just pass it on to other people? Like, it was ridiculous. Like, I'm tired all the time. Well, not all the time. I'm alive and awake in the morning, but just, yeah, we think that it's just us. We're just impacting us, but we don't know how we're impacting other people, and we need to be more aware of that.
Well, and it comes down to the two things I always say at the end of the show, and that is that regardless of our circumstances, you're in control of two things, right? Your attitude and your effort.
Mhm.
We always have control of those two things.
Absolutely.
It's not. I'm not saying it's always easy,
Oh,
but we
yeah.
we can control it if we want to, right? And I think that's part of when you talk about these four key actions that credible sparks need to take. Understanding and meeting the standards of others, having a very narrow say-do gap, which we probably need to explain, and communicating your intent and expectations to others, and holding others accountable when they fail to meet standards. Part of that is where our attitude and effort is, right? I mean, right? Because those two things I can control. So, let's start with understanding and meeting the standards of others. Why is that such a big action point, and how does our attitude and effort affect those?
That's all really great points. And I like to think about, like, your credibility is that you can only influence it. You can't control. Like, Jay, like for you, like, you hold the keys and the definition of success in our relationship. It's up to me to try to figure out how to, what that is, right? So if
Right.
I'm trying to influence my credibility with you, I first and foremost need to understand what's important to you, Jay.
Right.
Like, maybe showing up on time, maybe being a dynamic guest, maybe having some conversation and not answering your questions yes or no, like those type of things. So, like, trying to understand.
Thank you. Thank you for not doing that,
What we're gonna
Angie.
work
I
with,
really
right?
do. Thank you. Thank you so much for not doing that, because I really want more yes and no.
Yeah, but trying to understand, like, the relationship from your perspective and being empathetic and understanding of that. The second piece is, like, if I'm working with you, just having a narrow safety gap. So if after the show I say, hey, Jay, I'll follow up with this, I actually do it. And I'm not a flake about it, because if I'm a flake about it, you're going to lose trust in me or credibility. My credibility is going to go down. So that's one piece, right? And then thinking about too, like, say that we're coworkers and say that we've got other people working around us and I'm the boss. Well, my success isn't really dependent on just what I do. It's dependent upon all of us. And where people really trip up sometimes is not taking the time to communicate what success looks like. And then a week later, something happens, the boss blows up and is like, why did this happen? You're to blame, you're to blame, you're to blame. And it probably really was me, right? Like, I didn't tell you, I didn't share, I didn't do all these things. Blame is like the easiest knee-jerk reaction, but accountability, like, how did I set everybody up to fail here. This is a problem. So it's those three things, like know what's expected, be really mindful of the space between your actions and words, your say-do gap, being able to clearly communicate what success looks like to everybody around you. And when it doesn't happen, just having the conversation. Like accountability, it's not bringing in HR, bringing in a mediator, trying to solve the problem. It's like, hey, if it's on me, it's on me. And if it's on you, let's just talk about it. We don't have to, nobody has to be jerks here. It's professional, it's not personal.
Yeah, yeah, Q-tip it, right, is something my wife gave me, right? Quit taking it personally, right?
That's great.
Right? She says that all the time. She hands me, she'll hand a Q-tip to me. Go, you quit taking it personally. I'm like, okay, well, you're right.
I love that. Never heard that. That's awesome.
Um,
I steal that.
I have to give her credit. So, honey, you've got your props on the radio. So here it is. You talk about accountability and feedback, but there's something in accountability that is rarely ever taught when holding others accountable. And you say this so beautifully. The focus, when we're giving feedback to holding people accountable, the focus must be on the other person and getting them better.
Yeah. How many times have you given feedback out of anger, out of frustration, out of like your preference for communication? What's easiest for you? Maybe it's a note, maybe it's a text. But if you really put the emphasis on them, how they would value receiving information that can help them get better and grow, you're going to have a completely different approach. It's not going to be a text. It's not going to be an email. It's going to be like, hey, I'm going to give you a call, and I might actually share the feedback in a different tone of voice or package it differently and send it to you because it's about you. If it's about me, then I'm wrong.
Right.
It should be about you.
Right. I love that. I think that's just something we need to keep in mind whenever we're trying to hold other people accountable. And I know that there's a lot of coaches that listen to the show, and I know that there's a lot of C-suite professionals that listen to the show. And something just to keep in mind, folks, when you're giving your accountability, when you're giving your feedback, remember this is about helping the other person get better. And I just think that was just a beautiful thing, and I don't think we can overemphasize it enough. Chapter 4, becoming an accountable leader. You say it starts with self-evaluation. And am I the problem? Accountability is the acknowledgement, not the admiration of a mistake. Quickly moving beyond it to get to what everyone wants, the solution and resolution. Let's talk about the accountable leader.
So if you're close enough to a mistake, you might not have caused it, but you contributed to it in one way, shape, or form. I think just bottom line. You just have to see how you did it and be comfortable saying, I may have made a mistake here, and people trust you. It's kind of funny, right? It's paradoxical, really. We think that the more we talk about our mistakes, missteps, our imperfections, that people lose trust and confidence in us. But the reality is, the more we talk about our mistakes, our missteps, and be vulnerable around where we're not perfect, people actually grow in confidence because they know we're not lying. Like if you try to hide from the fact that you were causing something, guess what? Everybody knows.
Right.
People have already figured it out.
Right.
Step up and solve the problem. And so, you in coaching and the work that you do, you see organizations, you see people spend a lot of time admiring problems, blaming problems, talking about other people. It's like, okay, got it. Get it out. I'm your coach. It's a safe space, but let's talk about you. What are you going to do about it? Cut to the chase.
Yeah. Again, I have to give props to my wife on this too. This is years and years and years and years ago. She would always say that when people will come clean with whatever they've done, it releases the shame. And because shame is something that is very powerful that we don't acknowledge in the business world, but shame can be a very difficult thing when we've made a mistake, and no matter how big. And so we don't want to bring it out, but the more we talk about it, the less shame we actually feel, which you actually allude to here, because it frees us at some point where we go, because you say the first time it takes courage, but then after that, there's this like freedom that happens, doesn't it?
Yeah. And you inspire other people to talk about it too. Like if you want people to confide in you, share their secrets with you, you got to go first.
Yeah, right.
You got to go first.
Right. Yeah. Right. You got to be the first one. Sorry. If you want, right. You can't expect your team to be vulnerable. And by the way, we need to be clear that there's a difference between vulnerability and disclosure, right? Disclosure says I will pick and choose what I want you to tell. Vulnerability is I'm going to tell you what this is it. I'm an open book and I've got glass covers. I think if we want true vulnerability where people are willing to step up and be accountable for their actions in your teams or your business, it's going to start with you, doesn't it?
You have to go first. I think all these things, and I find it, I call it like the curse of leadership awareness too. Like the more you understand about leadership development, the more I think you can expect this to be common knowledge and understood by all. And that's kind of a curse. No, you know this, therefore you must do this. You must behave it, because the day you start expecting leadership from other people is just the day you're going to be extremely disappointed. We don't teach this in school. I went to, the University of Michigan. In our fight song, we say we're the leaders and best. But I don't, I pursued my English major in undergrad. I didn't learn leadership when I was reading Jane Austen.
Right.
I didn't. I learned some powerful stories, but I did not learn stuff. It was the Marine Corps.
Right. Yeah, the Marine Corps taught you leadership. It wasn't college, right? I mean, yeah, I don't care. We both have been to grad school and beyond, and I still haven't got a leadership class, right? Still haven't had one, right? Literally, it's been the books and other things that I have had to learn leadership from, not from college, right? And by the way, congratulations to the Wolverines for.
Can I tell you a story, like a leadership story? Thank you. I'm really excited. I had nothing to do with the Michigan Wolverines, and I'm probably as much of a fair weather fan as the next, but I do really love college football. But we just had a really bad go of it recently. And I just think about our coach this year, and you think about the beginning of the year, coming up a really bad year last year, coming up a string of really bad years. And, I'll be honest, I'm like, I don't think he can do it. I don't know what he can do. So you start to lose belief in people, right? But thank God he didn't lose belief in himself. I'm inspired by that, right? He has his contract renegotiated, so possibly they could exit from it sooner. He's taking a pay cut to keep the job, all this crappy stuff. And guess what? He believes in himself. He believes in his team. And I'm just like, these are the lessons that I love to smack myself on the faces. See, you're a jerk, Angie. You gave up on him too soon. You shouldn't do that. You better, but it's right. One of those things that, I love sports. So I love to see the parallels of leadership.
I do too. I'm a big sports guy. As a matter of fact, it's on, it seems like 24 hours a day here. By the way, speaking of sports and speaking of something great, it's this book, and it's the person I'm talking to. Her name is Angie Morgan, and her book, Spark: How to Lead Yourself and Others to Greater Success. You're listening to her here on A New Direction. Hey, everybody, listen. Epic Physical Therapy offers the most advanced top-of-the-line equipment, including the Ultra G anti-gravity treadmill, the Normatec compression sleeves, and my favorite, Game Ready. Listen, they're trained and certified in the most comprehensive cutting-edge treatments available, like blood flow restriction therapy, dry needling, cupping, and that's just a few. There's a reason why professional athletes from all over the world come in to see them. It's because they know they're going to get their epic relief, their epic recovery, and epic results. You can do the same. Go to epicpt.com. That's EPICPT.com. And Linda Craft and Team Realtors, I am just telling you, they are outstanding. I'm not just saying that. I have watched them firsthand, how they work with people. And what is most impressive to me is what they do is they get to know the person, because it's all about the relationship at the end of the day. They want you to know that your home is as precious to them as it is to you. And so when you're ready to sell your home, or when you're ready to buy your home, start with the relationship makers, the relationship maintainers. Start with Linda Craft and Team Realtors. You can learn more by going to lindacraft.com. That's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with Angie Morgan and her book, Spark. And are you having a good time?
I'm having a blast.
Good.
It's so much fun talking to you. And I love talking to peers in this world, just because you can tell that we read the same books, we drink the same Kool-Aid. It's awesome.
Yeah, we do. When I was reading this, I was telling my wife, I said, yeah, we're all on the same page on this one. I said, it just happens to be that I didn't write it first, and so they did before I did. But it is a great book. Again, folks, Spark is the name of the book, available at Amazon bookstores near you. Let's talk chapter 5. Act with intent. Make decisions that matter. And you say sparks are the thinkers and the doers who envision what a better future looks like and take actions that lead themselves and others toward it, because we're all the sum of our actions, our decisions.
Mhm. Yeah, I think about, well, anywhere where you are at life. Look at the past couple weeks in your calendar and assess it against how you feel today. Because we are the sum of our choices. And if we are feeling tired, burnt out, exhausted, we can own that and we can change it, but start with the vision. The vision is really critical because it gives you direction, right? It's that GPS, North Star, where you're going to be headed. And then spend time thinking about just what you need to do more of differently. Stop.
Right.
This isn't rocket science, right? This is just, doing a total self audit and getting yourself on a plan to move forward. I mean, I've got my planner right here. I like to write out a lot, and it's clarifying the writing process, but it gives me guidance and direction on where I'm headed. And so I always, at the end of the day, spend time in my gratitude journal, and it really helps me account too for how I did spend my time. Was it in a good space? Was it connected to where I want to go in life? And I also too, like, so I write about the 3 things I'm most grateful for, but I also write the 5 things that are most important to me, because it really, again, if they're in front of you, just imagine your life, right? If the 5 most important things to you are in front of you every single day, don't you think you're going to find some way to make those manifest in your life more of? Because you can't ignore them.
Right. Yeah. No, I have these little gratitude cards that I do regularly, right? That I journaled for years, and then my wife bought me this gratitude jar. It's got gratitude on it, and I have these little cards that I write down my 7
Sure.
gratitudes. And I believe in starting your day that way, because I believe that, first of all, the first thing is that if you start your day with gratitude, it's really hard to have a bad day. And then the second thing is, even if things go wrong, you can always go back to your gratitude journal or your gratitude card, look at it, and you know what you'll find: no matter how horrible your day was, you're still grateful for those things that you wrote down,
I love that.
regardless. And so they never change. Your gratitudes never change. They are a foundation, they're solid rock. So I really encourage people to do that. And I know that Angie does the same. There's something else that you encouraged in this chapter, and I'm grateful for you writing it. It says, the subtitle is Imagining Your Future. We change with age, but it's not over. We are still works in progress.
Yeah, the research around that is phenomenal. Dan Gilbert, a researcher, I think I always say Harvard or Stanford. I can never get the same thing, though it's completely different quotes. So sorry, Dan Gilbert. But yeah, he's done a lot of research. We do change, and we underestimate how much we change. And this underestimation is lost opportunity to
Right.
explore. So take whatever it is on your mind and just kind of imagine 2 steps higher, right? Level up your dreams.
Yeah, but I think the other thing about that statement was, I think what happens is, because we live in such, I don't know if I can say this, but maybe, yeah, I think I can. I think we live in a very ageist society,
Mhm.
meaning that as people get older, right, we kind of dismiss them. We don't see the value, and a lot of times as we get older and people want us to move out of our career, and we kind of think that it's over. And I hate the word retirement, because I always ask, what are you retiring from, and what are you going to, right? Because there's no vision in retirement in my mind.
It's like send out to pasture.
Right? Yeah, right. It does, doesn't it? It sounds like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to retire. I'm just going to sit and die now. I mean, that's how it feels to me. But I think I really want to encourage the older folks who listen to the show. It's not over. There's more for you to do. But you've got to be more creative. And I think that's the beautiful thing about what you're saying in this chapter is, you got to be intentional. You got to have you still have to have a vision, regardless of how old you are. And this isn't just for young people. And I think that was the beautiful thing about the statement that you make in this book, and that this book is really for everybody's age. This isn't just for young, inspiring entrepreneurs or first time leaders. This is for all people, regardless of where you're at.
I 100% agree. And, I think of my parents too, going through somewhat of a redefinition on retirement. And even if you're taking a leave from the workforce for a bit, there's
Right.
opportunity, right? Nobody wants to, we are not designed to sit at home and wait to die. We're designed to be vibrant and active and growth oriented. And
Right.
so I think often don't fight against it, just have a plan, be
Right.
intentional about it.
Yeah, yeah. Again, this is another one of my wife's isms, right? I mean, nothing stays static. If you're not growing, you're dying.
Right.
And if we're not actively in growth, we are dying. And it doesn't matter what you're doing. Are you growing, right? Which is why those 4 areas I bring up are so important, and you allude to them here. Is that you have to be in constant growth. You can be in constant learning. We can be in constantly improving, and that's ageless.
And I think too about the opportunity to try, like just to explore. You don't have to commit entirely, but just explore, examine, do experiments, figure it out. Like I think in our, that Yoda quote, "Do or do not, there is no try."
Right, right,
I think that kind of sets us up negatively for thinking about the things that we want to explore. Like we have this success or failure mindset associated with it. It's just like, go try it. If it don't work, you can change and
right,
keep trying something else. So,
right, right. Yeah, no, we're on the same page here. I'm going to move to chapter 6. Be of service, recognize and meet others' needs. And the Marine Corps has another saying, a slogan, motto: mission first, people always,
mhm.
which was interesting. But I know, but there is a story, the Coca-Cola story, and I really feel like that story is a great example of both of those things: mission first, people always, and be of service. Do you mind relaying that story?
Yeah, I'll say a fuller version is on our sparkslee.us site. But just to give you a high level, when I was graduated from college, I went into a 6-month infantry officer training program, and our instructors were just teaching us so much. And I have to be honest, I was struggling all the time, trying to keep up with just some of the academic instruction of just platoon leadership, basic platoon leadership. And so one of the instructors, his name was Captain Harper. He didn't go by that. He called himself Coca-Cola because he was the real thing. So he was the real thing. He was intimidating, but especially to me, who was struggling so much. And then he surprised me one day when I got called to his office. I thought it was going to be the moment when I heard that I just wasn't making the cut or that I needed to go to remedial something. I was just expecting something so terrible because he was just an intense person to me in my mind, never had anything nice to say about anything. And he had these high standards and he would just whip you into shape to meet them. So I get to his office and he takes a different tone in his voice. He asks me to sit down and he conveys to me that my grandma passed away. And it was a shock, not just her passing, but really because of what happened next. In that moment of need, he did everything he could to tell me and reassure me that I was going to be with my family. He called for a plane ticket. He arranged transportation. He'd done so much in this moment of need. And it was just surprising the level of compassion and care given to me because I just hadn't seen it before. But I shared this in the book because the lessons it taught me was that to be a leader, you can be tough, you can be assertive, you can be aggressive, you can have high standards. But if at the end of the day, you're not taking care of people, you're not meeting their needs, then you're going to miss out on the opportunity to lead them, to transform a group of individuals into a team. And we see examples of this all the time, like, right, that you just probably saw too, that CEO who fired 500 people on Zoom.
Yeah.
Like what a jerk thing to do. Like, I don't know this person. I mean, there's caring, more compassionate ways to convey bad news. Just because it's easy for you doesn't mean it's the right thing to do, right? There's better ways to make right. And so I think about leadership as a philosophy. And this chapter is all about a philosophy you can have about engaging with people. If you can make people better off because their experience with you, you can serve them, you can lead them. And so think about that. And I think going back to what we were talking about earlier, like we have choice. Every communication, every interaction, I can make you better, or I can make you neutral, or I can make it worse. It's like it's your
Right.
choice. And it's
Right.
like, who doesn't want to make people feel better just because of their engagement?
Yeah, I think the reason that story was so powerful is that exactly what you said. Because I had this envision of this tough, um, just really intense, that could just make giant men pee in their pants, and
Yeah.
and then to have this compassion and calling you by your first name, right? I mean, is what you described in the book, and I was like going, we probably need more of that in leadership, don't we?
Oh, having that compassion and that heart and an empathy and all those things. Yeah, this is coming from just somebody you wouldn't have expected it from. But yet, in my moment of need, he showed up and he was always showing up. I just was kind of blind to it too, to be honest with you.
Right.
It's like I was more focused on me and my deficiencies than really experiencing his leadership. And I started to pay attention.
We have been on our hour, which
Thank
has
you.
gone just flown by.
Yes, it has. I've enjoyed this, Jay. It's a wonderful program, wonderful message in the introduction. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. If you'd like to leave people with a new direction for them, what would you leave them with based on Spark?
Oh gosh, a new direction.
Yeah.
Um,
Based on your book, what would be a new direction you might leave the listeners out there? And by the way, we've got listeners all over the world right now. I'm looking at them all over here
yeah.
on CastBox FM and all over. So thank you for listening. But what would you maybe lead them based on Spark?
Don't wait for somebody to tell you that you're a leader.
Mm,
It's not a title. It's nobody's going to anoint you a leader. It's not a position. It's not a promotion. It's action and behavior. And when you start to understand that, you recognize you're not chosen to lead, you choose to lead. This
mm.
is something you can do on your own. It's not about the title, it's about the opportunity you have to make a difference in your life and make a difference in other people's lives simply because of your behavior. And exactly that challenging, but it starts with you.
Awesome. Her name is Angie Morgan. The book is Spark: How to Lead Yourself and Others to Greater Success. Folks, that is the show. I say this every
Thank
week.
you.
Stay with me, Angie. Here's the deal, folks. You know this is true, regardless of your circumstances, regardless of what is happening, regardless of the pressure, regardless of the stress, regardless of what is going on in your life. You have control over your attitude and your effort. Take that control because it is within your power. It may not be easy, but like we said at the beginning, it's just discipline and then it becomes habit, and attitude and effort can become a habit. I'm going to be back next week with another great guest, another great show. And as I say to you every week, ciao, everybody.
Awesome.